Hello, in today's video, we're going to go over the 4 phases of the software development life cycle. So we will have an introduction to the systems analysis, systems design, the implementation, and testing. All right, so these are the 4 different phases of the development life cycle. And here you can see that in this figure right here, we're also talking about evolution, and we will see how evolution fits in this model. So using an example, we're going to go through the 4 different phases and see how they all could come together to develop an application. All right, so for the example, we're going to try the process of having a customer selecting and purchasing products online. So in detail, we have a customer who comes in online to the website, selects some items to be purchased, then adds those items to the shop. Customer selects a shipping option, and then the total amount to be paid is displayed by the system. Now, the first phase, when we are facing this problem or trying to implement a system to complete these requirements, first we need to know what we're doing, who is involved in this process, where is this process happening, and when. So for this very simplistic process, who is the customer? So we have the customer interacting with our application or with our system. The what is the purchase. So we have the customer trying to purchase, and then we are applying online, and the when would be anytime. Since it's online, the system needs to be up and running 24/7. When we say analysis, or we talk about gathering requirements, we can also talk about them in terms of inputs and outputs. So if you think about it, having a customer purchasing products online, we can think of several inputs. So we have the customer who needs to specify the items that need to be purchased, the price of each item entered by the customer, or would be more likely given by the website or provided initially in our database. And then we have the quantity of each item to be purchased, and that would be an input by the customer. And then we have shipping options. So we can assume that we have several shipping options, and then the customer would select one of them. And as of the output, we are going to display the total amount to be paid by the customer. So as far as the requirements are concerned, these would be our requirements. We can think of them as a set of inputs and outputs. Now, once we know what needs to be done and who is involved in the process, we need to think about how. Well, how are we going to create this application? How will the application complete this process? Okay, so we have our application that first needs to list the items purchased. So we need to get a list of everything that the customer has selected or put in their shopping carts. And then we need to determine the price of each item. Also, we need to determine the quantity of each item as selected by the customer. Using all of these information or all of these pieces of data, we can calculate the total price of the items to be purchased. And then we need to determine the shipping costs depending on the shipping option that was selected by the customer. And using all of that information or adding up all of these costs, we can identify or calculate the total amount to be paid by the customer. So once we have selected or we have decided how we will go about completing that process, we now need to get the software ready. And we have 2 basic options. We can, as a company or as a small business owner, we can either select to purchase the software and customize it, because usually software that's available for purchase fit the needs that are. So whenever you think about purchasing software, you have to think that there would be some customization involved. So there would still be some coding that needs to be done. Option would be application online, in-house. Or the second option would be to build the application in-house. And to do that, we first need to identify objects and identify the properties and methods that need to be implemented or coded. And when we say objects, objects are different entities that would be represented in our code. So, for example, in this very simplistic example that we went through, which is having the customer purchase items online, we can have one class or one object that would describe the customer. So we have customers that would have different attributes and have a different object for the items to be purchased. So for each item, we can have the price that's associated with that item, and then we have properties. So we can identify buttons that would be used during for this specific application, and then each button or each control would have its own property and own method. For example, we would have a purchase button. For example, let's say we have a buy now button. That button, through the application, we need to identify the properties of that button, which would actually tell us how would the button look like, what is the text that would be written on there, the size of that button and or that control, and then we have a set of methods that would be associated with that same control, and those methods would tell us what would happen in case the user clicks on that control, or maybe before the user clicks on it, etc. So after implementation, after the code is written, we get to the testing or debugging part. And this is really the most interesting part of the development lifecycle, since in this phase, we get to see how the application works. We get to identify the bugs that we have introduced during the coding process, and then during the integration test is when we try to combine all those classes or all those projects that we have built together under the same solution and test them all together and see if they work well all together. And then the last set of tests that we go over are the system tests. The system tests are where we test the entire system. So let's say we have several solutions integrated and talking to each other, then we would take and test the entire system altogether. And then once we have tested the system in-house, we go actually and we deploy the system at the user site and then test it over there. And this is what we refer to as user acceptance tests. This is the process by which the user gets to either accept the application that we have implemented or developed, or decline and refuse to take it, saying that that's not really what was expected for this specific application or software. And as far as user acceptance tests are concerned, there are two types of testing. There's the alpha testing and beta testing. Alpha testing is the one where we use some bogus data or synthetic data, and the beta testing is where we use the real data. So thinking back to our example, so having a customer purchasing something online, when we have or when we try to go through the user acceptance test for a similar project, what we would do is to actually deploy the application, set it online, and then use some fake data to do our alpha testing. So we would just have our testers or our engineers go through the application, select some items to be purchased, and then add them to the shopping cart, select a shipping option, see if that is the real amount or the correct amount that needs to be displayed. With beta testing, it's a phase where we go over the testing after the deployment of the real data. We get real customers using the product or using the application, and we observe the application and see if it is displaying the correct data and if it is behaving the way it is supposed to be. So after we have gone through all those phases and we have tested our application, we got a set of users to test our application, we actually do the complete deployment or the go live at customer site, customers using our application. And it is important to keep in mind that this is not the last step, but there is an evolution phase where we still need to improve the software. And as you may know, software still right now would include tons of bugs that are not discovered and customers start using the actual project. Because systems now are so big and so large, and we have tons of customers using the software simultaneously, it's very difficult to identify bugs in-house or during the testing phase. So unless you have a lot of customers accessing that application and using the software, it is very difficult to uncover some specific bugs. So there would be still some improvement to be done to the software after deployment. And also, there are some improvements other than bug recovery or bug fixes. After reception of user feedback, we can go ahead and go back to our software and improve it based on that feedback provided by the users. And also, depending on the new technologies that come up, there would be still some improvements to be added to the software. So, for example, as far as payment systems are concerned, for our specific example, we could maybe later on, for a later version of the software, we can create a new payment system, for example, using Apple Pay. So that would be an example of introduction of new technologies that would require us to go back and improve our software. Okay, and these are the 4 phases of the development life cycle. And in the next video, we should be now ready for obviously, for small and large projects, try to think of the development life cycle and try to go through all of these phases just to make sure that we are doing the right thing and minimize the bugs and minimize any problems that could evolve during the development life cycle. All right, so I hope you enjoyed this video and see you in the next lecture.